Hey everybody, it's Kenny Aronoff in my studio, Uncommon Studios, LA. As you can see, blast off to the music universe.
All right, everybody, we have a big one for you today. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go to your shelf of music, because I know if you listen to this show or you watch this show, I know you have one. And I want you to just close your eyes. And I want you to pull a record, a CD off of your shelf. And I want you to look on the back or open the liner notes and look at who the drummer is. And there's a pretty damn good chance that the drummer is our guest today, the legendary session and live player, Kenny Aronoff.
Oh yeah, I honestly forgot because he's done so much. We've been prepping for this for a couple of weeks now. I honestly forgot he had written his book, or I would have had it in front of me because I have a copy of it. And this was it's a long episode, and excuse some of the jump edits because Zoom has not been our friend today as we're recording this, and it's been kind of all over the place, but it's affected everybody from what I'm hearing. So if you can handle that, you've got to sit down for the next hour and listen or watch this episode. It's fantastic.
And if you get a chance, if you're listening to us wherever you hear your podcast, go to themusicuniverse.com. Find the article for this in our podcast section and watch it, because I think my jaw dropped more than any podcast I've ever recorded ever listening to this guy talk. I mean, I don't think Kenny Aronoff is human. I think he is superhuman. It's just insane. And he's so cavalier and about it. And it's just a fantastic conversation.
He's a beast, and all my other fellow drummers out there know him. They know they know what he's capable of doing until they hear this episode and see what really goes on behind the scenes to be Kenny Aronoff and produce or just be a part of these shows. He doesn't even produce most of them. He's just a part of it. And he really lays the foundation of what a professional drummer, studio and live, what you have to do to become that. At least that's his way of doing it, and everybody has their own way, but he just takes it above and beyond, and it's flawless. He can be seen everywhere, and you're gonna hear him later or see him later this year when the Kennedy Center honors are held in DC, I'm sure. And
you see, that's one thing, we talk with him about it, but I want to say this. Is he hired again this year for it? Do we know that he's back?
I honestly don't know that, but typically he is the drummer that they use for that. And if he's used for that, you'll see him with honoring U2 and Amy Grant and all kinds of people later this year. So you're also going to see him on tour with Joe Satriani. He's hitting the road September through November. And he tells us too about his own projects, and he's super cool, super human, and a beast of a guy as far as drums go. And here's our interview with Kenny Aronoff, and it starts kind of different. We kind of seeing us first meeting on here, and I introduce me, and then we just kind of go with it. So here we go. How's it going? My name's Buddy. Nice to meet you again.
Oh yeah, were you in Indy?
No, actually, the only time we met, I thought I was going to get fired from my job the next day because it was at the Cat Club when you were playing in that Zeppelin tribute band, and I stayed out to chat with you, and I was late the next day, my third day on the job. I'm like, hey, it's worth it to chat with a legend. So,
hey, dude, man, that's a fucking good reason to get fired. I took those gigs real serious. Anytime you're playing, somebody said, why are you bringing your 26-inch bass drum and your snare drum and your cymbal? I said, are you fucking kidding me? Anytime you're playing John Bonham in Led Zeppelin in L.A., you fucking do it the right way, which is he had a fucking 26-inch bass drum, not a 22-inch beat-up piece of shit bass drum. It's not Led Zeppelin unless he's got, kick, snare, and hi-hat.
Exactly. Little background, I'm a drummer myself. I was working, trying to make it at the time, and we were going out everywhere, and I heard the guys were interested because it was a Zeppelin tribute band. I'm like, Kenny Aronoff's playing. I got to be there. And I'm hanging
Yeah.
out till I can't hang out anymore. And that was like 2 a.m. And I remember waking up
Yeah.
an hour and a half
Oh, it was
later.
2 a.m. Holy fuck. Oh, we did the whole hour and a half. That was back when we were really full on. A whole Zeppelin tribute. Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
It was awesome. It was an early, I think in town like 3 months at the time. And
Yeah.
it was fantastic to see that.
Up
And I
close.
wish it was still going. It did. And I don't want to make this about me, but that was my band's very first place we ever performed in
Wow.
town. It was the day after Christmas in 2008. We
Yeah.
played right there.
Those things are big. You're in LA on the Sunset Strip playing. It's like that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's like
mhm.
historic. I can feel how exciting that would be. I mean, that's why I felt no matter what. I played the Forum. I played, all the big venues. But suddenly you're on Sunset playing at the Roxy, or you're playing at the Whiskey, or the Cat Club. It's pretty cool. Or even the Viper Room. You're in LA. You're in the scene.
Oh yeah. Those were awesome times. Love the background. I see you're in your studio.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
I got
love
about
it.
1,300 of these things. I don't even have enough walls to put, and I don't have them in my house. I have them in my office. But
Yeah.
house, I don't.
Well deserved, my friend. I mean, you've been voted #1 studio drummer across the world, modern drummer, everybody. Glad to have you. Formally introduce you now, Kenny Aronoff, Music Universe podcast. Thank you for doing this, man. This is going to be awesome.
You're welcome. And thank you for having me, dude.
This is
Glad
fun.
to.
I want to kick this off because we met in New York at the Jim Imoff
First,
thing. Yes, Ursay, excuse me, at the Ursay band thing. And it happened there. I made the mistake watching a YouTube clip where you were playing behind Garth Brooks at the Kennedy Center. I'll fully admit it. How often are you mistaken for Paul Schaefer? I just have to know right off the bat.
well, yeah, I get that a lot. I just did a thing on the USS Iowa, a veterans thing, and I was playing in the house band. So I played with everybody from the Doors to the Four Tops to Paul Schaefer, to Debbie Gibson, Belinda Carl. I mean, people, the Doobie Brothers, Joe Bonamassa. Anyway, the Four Tops. They thought I was Paul Schaefer playing drums. It literally, I mean, what the guy said, "Hey man, come here. I got a picture of you and me." And I went, "Dude, do you think I'm Paul Schaefer?" He went, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm not." And it was even funnier that Paul was the MC of that show. Yeah. I get this also thing of who's that actor Tucci? Is it Danny Tucci or
Stanley
Oh,
Tucci.
Stanley
Stanley
Tucci. Yeah.
Tucci? People will say, "You Stanley Tucci," but here's the best one. So if I see somebody looking at me and they're sweating and their eyes are bulging out, they usually think I'm the lead singer of Tool.
I could see that.
Yeah.
What about
What'll be is like I was in Chicago, um, the airport, and they have these big escalators that go from Terminal C to B, and I'm going down. It's humongous, like 2 stories, 3 stories, I don't know. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I see a guy coming up, and he's like, and his mouth is open. His eyes, I see him go running up, and he's coming back down. I know it's not to meet me. I mean, Kenny Aronoff. The guy, is trying. He thinks I'm the singer in Tool. He comes down. Sure enough, he's sweating. He's like, "Are you?" And I'm like, "Nope."
I don't have the guts to do that. I mean, I met a lot of celebrities in my, doing all this stuff. I don't have the guts to. We were in Nashville. Gosh, we were in Nashville, and I'm like at a VIP event, and we thought it was one of the stars of the TV show Nashville. I did, and I kept looking, but I never. It wasn't her. I knew in the back of my head, so I know that feeling. It's
Yeah.
like you want to do. I don't have the guts to do it if I think I'm going to be wrong. That's great.
well, do you ever get mistaken for Joe Satriani.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, and I'm going on tour with him for 9 weeks, and it's such a cool look. Him, both of us, bald and skinny heads, and then we wear glasses and we wear black. It's a great look. And we went out and did the Experience Hendrix tour before COVID, and it was me and him, obviously, and it was what's his name, Doug Pinnick from King's X. Now he's tall and skinny, but he's bald. He's, obviously he's got black skin, but it was the coolest looking band I've ever been in my life. I mean, it was unbelievable. And so yeah, I mean, I went to a G3 concert in Australia once. I was out there with Fogerty, and Joe came up to me, and he just backstage and goes, "Hey, would you put my guitar on?" I went, "Yeah." And then he took his glasses off and put them on me, and then he pushed me out on stage. They were about to go, they were about to go on stage, and the audience went nuts for about 2 seconds. But then I think they saw the biceps and the way I'm holding the guitar. And then when I strum it, it was obvious I wasn't Joe. It's gonna be great, man. It's a great visual.
That's
hilarious.
incredible.
So does that mean you guys, when you're on tour with Joe, you guys going to switch spots to fool the crowd at any point during the night?
He'll do drums.
I talked to him about that. As a matter of fact, that's a good. I'm going to tell him the time we switch is when I'm supposed to do my drum solo. And I think he probably do better playing drums than me playing guitar. That's a fact,
So when you get called for studio work, they know to only call you for drums and percussion.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I've never gotten a call for guitar.
I'm the same way. Drums, it's just, I think, natural, and they're fun. I mean, what drew you to drumming, for those who may not be aware?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What drew you to drumming?
Oh, I mean, it's just basically it's my energy, my desire, for excitement, and I think I was naturally pulled. I was pulled toward music. I mean, there's pictures of me with diapers dancing, and we were at some zoo, and they had Congo music going, and there's pictures of me dancing. I might have been 2 years old, maybe less. I don't know. When do you stop wearing diapers? It was before. I was still wearing diapers, and but the marching band, when we'd have Memorial Day in this little town of Western Mass. I grew up in a little, like a kind of an old country farmhouse in the hills of Western Mass, a town of 3,000, Stockbridge, Massachusetts. And on Memorial Day, they'd have a marching band come into town and then go to the three cemeteries. I mean, there's a building in the house in the town I grew up in that's from 17 something, and even in our kitchen, we had a big old, I mean, it was a regular house, but it has like an old Franklin stove from 18 something in there. We just didn't want to get rid of it. It was like iconic. Anyway, the drum line would get off the bus and start their cadence, and I went completely nuts. But the real thing that got me into rock and roll and drumming was I was playing outside with my twin brother when we were 10, and my mom screamed at us to come into the house, and we thought we were in trouble, which was usually the case. And we go running across the lawn, and we get into the house, and my mom is pointing to this black and white RCA TV set equipped with the rabbit ears and the tinfoil on it to get better reception, because there was no cable back then. And she's pointing to the TV set, and there's four guys on the TV set, and they're wearing suits, but not like our dad suits. They were cool suits, They had long hair, and two guys had electric guitars, and one guy had electric bass, and then there was a drummer up on this big riser with the suit and the long hair, and it was the Beatles. And when I saw them, I was just like, I'd never seen anything like that. I mean, I'd heard rock and roll on the radio because it was just the thing, but I'd never seen people perform, and it was so exciting, and the most exciting thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I was electrified and blown away. And all I knew is I wanted. It was that very moment I realized what my purpose in life was, before I even understood the words purpose in life, what they meant. I just knew that I wanted to be part of a team of musicians, a group of people that played music, and I didn't know who they were exactly. So I asked my mom. I said, "Who are these guys?" And and she said the Beatles. I said, well, I want to play in the Beatles. Call them up. I got to be in the band and forget about the fucking piano lessons. I'm playing drums now. I got to play drums. And of course, she didn't call the Beatles up, and we didn't have a lot of money, so they didn't get me a set of drums. And I was bummed because, I mean, this was all new to me. I mean, what do you do? I mean, there's no mentor or a manual or somebody to get help to get into the Beatles or any rock band at 10. And I mean, there was no internet, so there was no like YouTube. Nobody was posting on TikToks or Instagram. It was like
Right.
I was clearly had a purpose in my life. I had a passion, but I didn't have a clear pathway how to get there. So I was just like banging on things and listening to records and the radio. And my mom and dad finally got me a snare drum and a cymbal. And I started my own band immediately called the Alley Cats. And there's a picture of me. I mean, the 5-inch drum looks like it's like the size of a bass drum. I'm so small and I'm scared to death. I'm playing brushes. I didn't even have sticks, I don't think. And yeah, we're playing Beatles music in a talent contest. That was it, man. That was the beginning. And point is that passion, that excitement from seeing them is the fuel that has made me persevere and overcome all obstacles and setbacks that humans are going to run into in their life. And when you're doing something you absolutely love and you're crazy about, you persevere when shit is down. I mean, if you're not into it, you'll go, forget this, I'll move on to something else. But no, I mean, I'm living on a porch and trying to make it in a band. I mean, there was nothing else, that was it. That's the takeaway, is when you find that purpose in life, your deepest desires, your bliss, your truth, your passion, whatever you want to call it. You find
Right.
out basically, are we allowed to swear on this show?
Of
Please.
course.
Yeah, okay. I thought so. I already did swear. But I mean, the big question, I do speaking. I speak for corporations. I get hired. I would love to, and you're not supposed to swear on those, but I'd love to walk on stage after they play this opening reel, and I've played with everybody except for God, and I walk on stage. I would love to go like, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Because that is
Yeah.
the question, right? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing, man? I mean, I like to look at it like life is like, all right, we don't know for sure what comes after this, but it just seems so, life is so heavy and we're so evolved. I would like to think, I think, it's not I like to, I'm just going to believe that something comes after this. So I want to get the most value out of this life. And the biggest value you can get is to try to figure out why you're here and get on that. And through the process of why you're here, you're going to learn a whole bunch of shit and evolve
Mhm.
and get to that better place. So it's like graduating, junior high, you get into high school. Graduate high school, you get into college. Graduate college, you have a career. So I want to graduate this time on this planet so I get into the next, I can go to, the college of life or whatever's next. You know what I
Such
mean?
a
It all
great
makes sense,
attitude.
right? Do the
Yeah.
do the best you can now. It's almost like shame on you if you don't, because
Right.
there's value in everything you do. There are no mistakes. I don't even use those words anymore. No mistakes, no failures. They're just events that get you to the next place. And everything, no matter how negative, is a gift and a way to learn about so much about you and about the world and about everything. And this is how we get the most value out of life. If you don't learn, you will keep repeating the same thing until you do learn it. The world and the universe will wait for you to learn it. They got no clock. Hell, the dinosaurs were around for 165 million years. You think 100 years of our life is, I mean, that's like a huge amount of time. So anyway,
Right.
it's a lot of stuff, but it's valuable.
I wanted to ask, can you think back to a moment in your life where you thought to yourself, wow, I'm going to be a professional drummer for the rest of my life, and this is the moment that I've made it, that I know that this is what I'm going to do, and this is going to be the career? Because you've worked with everybody. So there has to have been a spark moment where all of a sudden Kenny Aronoff is the man to get the job done.
Well, I mean, I could tell you the moment I thought I was going to lose it, you know, so I'll back up a little bit. So, played in rock bands. From the Alley Cats was my first band, and we had that snare drum cymbal. And, of course, I didn't know how to make it in rock and roll. So I just played all the way through grade school, junior high and high school. And then I went to college and studied classical music, 4 years at the number one school of music in the country, Indiana University, which is, this is like not a hand holding, coddling type of school. You get your ass kicked. You're lucky if you get in, and you got to fight to stay in. But when you graduate, you're a bad mofo. I get into the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra, so I achieved the goal of go to college, get a degree in something, and get a job in that field. But my passion, let's go back to when I saw the Beatles, man, I turned down Jerusalem, and everybody was in shock, including me. I remember looking in the mirror going like, fuck, you just spent 5 years trying to do this and you got in, and now you're saying no. Reason why is I really still wanted to be in a rock and roll band. I listened to my heart. Back then there was no college for rock and roll. So in our family, you go to college, so I picked music, but it was either jazz or classical. And I thought I could get into an orchestra, which I did. Anyway, I spent 4 years trying to make it. I get in the Mellencamp band. And my point of this story is, it's not when I felt like I did feel like I had made it when I got in the Mellencamp band. I finally thought, all the education, all the perseverance, the hard work, the self-discipline, I was in flow, everything's happening, I get the gig, it was meant to be. And after 2 days of recording, I'm fired from the record out here in LA. And I'm devastated. And it was that moment, that very moment, I was fighting for my life. I went, when I was told I'm not playing on the record, and Mellencamp told me to go home after the week, I told him no. There's no fucking way I'm going home. This was a moment where I was backed up against the wall. I didn't realize, but I was in a fight or flight mode, not a fight or flight, because this is what I wanted to do. And he was taking it away from me. So I thought I'd made it, but clearly I had not yet. Anyway, I convinced him to stay. Ultimately, what made it possible for me to stay was I said I'd work for free. I'd work for free. You don't have to pay me. I'll sleep on the couch. And I went in the studio and watched these other drummers play. And that's where I learned, oh, this isn't about me. This is about we. I have to serve his songs, his music, his producer. The ultimate goal is to get the song on the radio to be a hit single. It's not about what I want to play. It's what's right for the song, what's right for the team. How do we win the Super Bowl? What do I do to help this team win the Super Bowl, or in this case, get on the radio? I never thought about that. When you're young, it's all about you. You practice, 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 me, and that's great. But to be Tom Brady, if in football terms, to win 7 Super Bowl rings, it's a team thing. I didn't know that. Anyway, 2 years later, I vowed I'd be on the next record, because I certainly wasn't on this record playing drums. And I did. And that's where Jack and Diane, John Mellencamp's biggest, most iconic song, number one hit single, still played on the radio today, 40 years later, and obviously on Spotify and iTunes and Apple Music and all that. When that went to number one, I still didn't feel, I was excited for 2 seconds, and then I feared that I could get fired again and that I have to prove to everybody this is not just a one-hit wonder. So then every album, every song John would write, he'd turn to me and go, "What do you got?" After we play a song for like twice, maybe on acoustic guitar. He wanted me to come up with another big drum thing or something to make his song a hit. That was my job. And I did that for 17 years. And when I started to do sessions, and John took 3 years off, and now everybody was hiring me, and I had drums in New York, LA, Nashville, Indiana, of course, where I lived, Japan, and Germany. People were flying me all over the world. They wanted that sound. That's when I started to realize, hey, I'm in a famous band and I've become a very successful session drummer. Now that's when I started to feel some sort of security. So it wasn't one gig. Just because Jack and Diane went to number one, that didn't solve my fear and insecurity of my position in the music business. I didn't
Right.
trust it. I felt like I'd been fired once. I never forgot that feeling. I suppose you could, in today's terms, you'd call that traumatic. It was
Mhm.
a memory and a feeling I didn't want to have to experience again.
Well, didn't you? I thought I heard something before where didn't you think you were going to get fired again because of the drum solo in Jack and Diane? You're like, this is a ballad. Why am I playing this?
Well, I didn't think I was getting to get fired, but you're right. I asked that question. What happens? We were making this record at Criteria in Miami, and it was 9 weeks. We only got 4 songs. John was in a shit mood. He was going through a divorce. He was about to lose his record deal again, which I didn't know about, and he had just almost died a week before we went in the studio off where he got
Mm.
hit by a dog in the dark as we were going into town. I saw the whole thing. A dog jumped out and knocked him off his Harley. He jumped
Oh my
on the
God.
Harley as it was spinning down the highway and hit a tree and exploded. We thought he blew up, but he did.
Oh,
Yeah, he had pushed off the bike just in time. And anyway, he had a cast on and he was in the studio and 2 guys got fired. He and I almost got in a fist fight, which would have meant I would have been fired. It was just a very strenuous, tense time for all of us. One day I walk in and the co-producer, Don Gaiman, had this metal box. And I went, "Don, what's that?" And he went, "Oh, this is something the Bee Gees are using next door. It's called the Lin 1 drum machine." I went, "Drum machine? They replaced drummers." I'm like, "This
Mm.
is not good." And I got in that fight or fight mode. I'm like, I got replaced by 2 humans 2 years ago. Now I'm going to get replaced by a machine. I'm like, "Fuck, what?" I grabbed the machine, grabbed the manual, and I program all that beginning part of Jack and Diane. That's, doosh, doosh, doosh,
mhm.
doosh, doosh. It was the beginning of drum machines. I mean, Phil Collins had it in a song called "In the Air Tonight," and what you call it, Hall and Oates were using it, like a Roland, and I program it, and that's when I'm sitting in the lounge after I gave the machine back and going like, "Man, what's happening, man? This music business is really difficult." I mean, it's like everywhere, every so often, it seems like I'm getting like thrown these obstacles and these challenges, and I'm thinking, am I in the horse and buggy business and the car just showed up and we're being replaced? I mean, and then that's when I get summoned by John, like, "Aronoff, we need a drum solo." And I'm thinking, on a ballad? A ballad. And so I'd learned my lesson from 2 years prior, and I went, all right, serve the song, serve the music, serve the artist, get this on the radio. Thank God we spent all day getting drum sounds. John wanted the biggest drum sound in the world. Now, back then in 81, most of the drums that were recorded were in vocal booths because you could control the sound better. In other words, you just have the
Mm.
close mics and then a couple of overhead mics. But when you get into a big room, now you got to deal with all the sound reverbing off of walls and ceilings and different frequencies, and it was a new science. And we spent all day messing with mic placement and creating the chain, because you have to understand, if a mic is close on a drum, you get that sound. Then the overheads get a perspective of, whatever, how far that mic is away. But if you walk back away from the drums 20, 30 feet, you get the drums, you get a sound of them from way over there. And they had
Right.
to blend those mic perspectives together to get ga, na, ga, weird hiccups in the chain. This was all new
Right.
science and it was new for us. So the bottom line is I had time to think about what I'm going to play. And the initial part of the solo is doosh, doosh, doo, boom, blam, bass drum, snare drum on N4. And I stopped. It was simple. It was explosive. My gut told me do something very simple, make a statement that you are here. And man, did John love that. And I literally stopped. I looked in the control room because I was looking for, some validation, like you from your dad or your teacher. Is this
Right.
good? They're all going, yeah. I mean, I hit a dead end, and I was summoned in the control room, and it was a long process, but eventually I came up with that two measure solo that completely blew John's career up and launched my career because it was on every radio station. Sometimes people say, "Man, I'm on 25 number one hits." Yeah, but what charts are you on? If you're on a
Yeah.
chart, I mean, the big kahuna is the Billboard Top 100 singles chart because you're competing with every style of music, every kind of artist. If you're number one on that chart, you're big time. You're on every TV show. Well, back then, every TV show, every magazine, every radio channel. You're number one. But if then they started splitting charts out to like, you know, purple alternative underwater charts. And there's only 50 groups, it's only 50 songs. So if you're number one there, well, what big deal?
Right.
So the top 100 that was the deal. If you're doing that, first of all, the artist and the label are making millions and millions of dollars. You're selling millions of copies. That meant something back then. Top 100 Billboard charts.
Yeah. Now, are you because with drum machines changing that, I have a hate relationship with those things because it replaces me. Do you embrace it now?
Oh yeah, I embraced it immediately. Well, if you think about it, I put the two worlds together and created a number one hit single. So I had
True.
no problem with it. When he said we're going to use a drum machine and not you, I was obviously freaked out. But when I put the real drums on top and created this huge thing, obviously I thought that's pretty cool, you know?
Yeah.
And but I mean, then it became the thing where you had to work with them. I mean, uh, people will send me, in my studio, Uncommon Studios, LA, where I am right now, people send me files all the time, and I put real drums on their songs. Back behind me is a control, Pro Tools, and my engineer imports their MP3s or their Pro Tools session into my computer, and then I take a drum. I have what you call it, I import all my tracks into their program and then I record drums and give it back to them. And template, that's what the word. I have a template, all and you just import it into their session. We record my drums, I give them a couple takes, and I send it back to them. But most the demos I get are all drum programs, and I just write every single note out and emulate exactly what they sent me, note for note. I can write every note out, and then I start to experiment and take it to the next level. Like in other words, the first take is what they program, and the way I'm thinking about it is like that's what they've been listening to for
Hmm.
maybe months, years, I don't know. And when they say do whatever you want, most of the time they don't mean that. They're used to this beat, these beats. The next take I give them is I start to experiment, do different fills, might change the beat up a little bit, and I have to ask the question: are you keeping anything? All the other, the recordings, the guitars, bass, keyboards, vocals, but are you keeping any of that? Because if they are, then I have to make sure whatever I play goes hand in hand with what they are keeping.
All right.
Very true. Very, very important to ask that question. But my point is, that's why the drum machines and the drum programs are still, or sequences are still, it's a part of the business. I mean, yeah,
Well,
and
look,
I just did a record, and the guy had decided he wanted to use the drum program. Or some people will mush the two together.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, look at Rick Allen. He wouldn't be able to still be with Def Leppard if it weren't for the machines. And they're doing this behind the scenes diary on the tour. And you
Yeah,
get a look at his barefoot pedal system. It's like, holy shit.
I know.
How do you that's amazing.
I know.
And now that electronic fused with the toms and the snares and the real cymbals is such an important part of their sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, technology can overtake you, but that's only if you don't find a way to use the technology creatively and put your signature on the technology. Just my opinion. So I
I
have a
mean, look at it's just another color in the box. Us drummers
mhm,
would rather there was no machines because
yeah.
every time it replaces us, but that ain't that's just the way it is,
Yeah.
It exists. It's part of our it's part of the technology in the music business. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Mhm,
I started to try to learn one when I lived in Nashville because I'm like, I'm gonna have to do this. And
Yeah,
then I decided to just stick with not doing studio
yeah,
work and kind of doing just live and
yeah.
playing with people that needed real drummers. And maybe that's why I kind of don't like it. I shouldn't say I don't like them. I should say they can be misused, I guess, in ways,
Well,
and
yeah, I
I don't
mean,
like it.
yeah, I mean, yeah, nothing's perfect and flawless.
Right,
Sometimes you'll hear a song go, it would have been a lot better if you had real drums
right.
because of
right.
the organic feel, the flow, the human. Humans are feeling creatures, and people can
Mhm.
feel things. Even though that's what blew me away when I recorded "Hurt So Good" and it Criteria Studio, no, at the Cherokee on Fairfax, the same studio I got fired in. We were doing "Hurt So Good," which became a #2 single on the American Fool record, right before Jack and Diane, which became #1, and that really was a huge launch of John's, or it took John's career to the next level. But I remember walking in and going like, God, listening to a playback, going, God damn, I'm playing this stupid simple beat, doosh ga doosh ga goo doosh ga doosh ga ga doosh ga. I'm doing a little slow, but I kept thinking, God, I wish I could do something cool like John Bonham or Stuart Copeland or even Neil Peart. But John's music didn't ask for that kind of drumming. And when I heard the playback and they had the drums real loud, I went, holy shit, man. I can feel in every single note and vibe. And it's not just the drum part, it's the emotion behind the drum part.
Mhm.
Wow. That's when it went, oh my God. That's amazing. Wow, that is
Yeah.
huge. That affects people, and people don't necessarily know why, but it makes them feel good. So that's when I took that to the live stage when I used to play. So back well, I still do, in front of 20,000 people or more. You can reach people in the last row by your your feel your feelings and your emotions. I mean, words are just ideas.
Hmm.
They're just ideas, but feelings are the
Mhm.
truth. And feelings and truth are your being, they're your essence, your personality, your soul. And people can feel that.
Yeah, very much. Um, a question I had excited to ask you about is, uh, do you ever get frustrated with your playing? And if so, how do you overcome that?
Do I ever get what with my playing?
Frustrated?
Oh, frustrated. The thing that would only frustrate me is that I can't do something that I want to do on the drums. But I
Hmm.
also know that if I put in the time, I have a thing called RPS, which is the repetition of any skill is the preparation for success. In other words, if you want to do something better than you're doing it, then you devise a way to practice and repeat that you just practice and practice and practice and practice and repeat and repeat and repeat. You start slow and get faster, and sometimes things take months and months for you to be comfortable with a certain thing. I'm doing the Joe Satriani tour, and there's some amazing drummers that had recorded records prior to the ones I did, and I'm learning their parts because they're like, especially if they start a song, you know,
Mhm.
uh, you know, it's one song, it's like all over the place. Slowly, it's like do 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 be do 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 ba ba do ba do ba do ba do ba do ba do. But fast as ba do 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 do. And I have to start slow, and then it's not part of my vocabulary yet, so I have to keep doing it
Mhm.
over and over again, and eventually I will go past that frustration.
Right. I love that. The challenge I wanted to ask you about, because this is how I was introduced to your work, was Kennedy Center. You've drummed a bunch of the Kennedy Center honors. Now, my understanding of a band makeup is that the drummer is in many respects the leader of the tempo, the leader of the band. But you have so many elements when you have, this celebrity and then that celebrity all coming in to play with the same
Yeah.
band. What challenges does that present you as a drummer to have to lead this group of incredible musicians and a singer who might have their own way of doing things, not to mention their own ego, uh, in the rehearsal for those kinds of things?
Well, the Kennedy Center Honors is the most challenging and event I've ever done, except maybe the Obama inauguration was like I played with 25 artists under a lot of pressure in the cold and not a lot of rehearsals. And that is the Super Bowl of gigs, the Kennedy Center Honors. First of all, you can't do it unless you can read music really, really well. And just because you read doesn't mean you got to be able to read and make it sound like you're not reading. It's got
Mhm.
to flow. So that right there is that. The other thing is you don't even get the songs until a week before. So if we're in the case where we were honoring the Who, the first time I ever did it, I had to do Who and George Jones. That's 14 songs, 14 artists, and totally two different styles of music.
Yeah.
That's the thing is I play. I'm known for I can play everything from I always say what is the Beatles, the Stones, Ray Charles, Buddy Guy, BB King, Tony Iommi from Sabbath, the Smashing Pumpkins, Celine Dion, Avril Lavigne, Elton John, Sting, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, the Highwaymen, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings, Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis have in common. Kenny Aronoff. So as a drummer, as you know, you get pigeonholed. So I luckily was able to get hired and people started to realize he can play every style of music. And so for the Kennedy Center Honors, that is exactly one of the reasons you're hired. You have to be able to read,
Mhm.
you have to be able to play multiple styles, and you have to be able to get along with people, and you have to be able to learn fast. So you get the songs. I learned the way it was on the record. I learned the latest version if they're playing it on YouTube, and then we come in, and then they bring in a stack. The musical director and I'm just waiting for this. The musical director comes in and he has charts all written out, and these charts are different than what I learned. And so I started adapting very, very quickly. And I got the tempos of every song. I've already practiced how to count it off. I've looked at it as if I'm leading the show. All
Mhm.
these things, because I know how to get from point A to point Z. I've learned that from doing these big shows. And a problem solver. I understand where the problems will be and can handle the adjustment. I call it adapt or die, where things come at you that you didn't expect, but I'm comfortable like a Jedi in Star Wars. You keep your cool so you stay alive. And that I understand that concept. So anyway, When he gives me the charts, I'm adapting immediately my charts to his charts numbers or the other way around because I take letter A from his chart, put it on mine. Oh my God, they're only doing one verse. I cross it out on my chart because I have all the drum parts written on my chart and I adapt everything over. So now we're ready to go. During the rehearsal, they change things. Then we go through all 7 songs. Then the artists start coming in. They change it again. I'm changing things in tempos. That night, I go home to my hotel, and rewrite everything till 3, 4 in the morning. Next day, we come in, we do a camera block for those songs. And I make note where each artist is coming on stage, the flow of the show. I get a script of the show. I understand when somebody does the initial introduction, could be from Tom Hanks or whatever. And I know when to count the band off or to give the tempo to the musical director based on what he's saying. I know that when he gets to "and the who," I know 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, so that when he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Who," bam, it's coming in right away. All these things I work out and understand how to run the show. And Matt, you saw me do the Jim Irsay thing. It's the
Yep.
same thing there. I'm acquiring all this information so that when the show starts, I know how to keep it in flow. I know who has to tune their guitars. I know who has to switch guitars. I know everything. And I talk, or as much as I can get, I talk to the stage manager, the musical director, and sometimes the producer of the show to understand everything.
That's amazing. I
Amazing.
had no idea all that went into that show, and
Yeah.
it's awesome that.
And things will go wrong. Like for example, we were honoring Neil Diamond, and one artist was supposed to hold a note for 6 measures, and they didn't. Instead, they were supposed to go da da, and I go boom ba da, bring the band in, and he went da da, and it was a moment of like, oh my God. And I look over the musical director, and I had stopped counting, which to me, I was going like, shame on you. You should have kept counting. I got thrown off. And he's going, ah. And then I just went into solve the problem, waited what I thought was 6 beats, bam, brought the band in. At the end of that segment, which was the last thing of the whole show, it's a 3-hour show. They got 5 different people they're honoring. And we're told to stay in our seats, which means the producer has made a check to check that section out. Now we do a camera block, and they record during the camera block, and they have that as backup footage. Whatever it was, the musical director's going, I thought I may have blown it. The musical director is going blah blah blah, mumbling something. I'm going, yeah, I know, I thought he was saying something to me, and then he mumbles again. Then finally he gets the word from on the headset. They go, and he says, "Everybody, thank Kenny Aronoff. He saved the day." I was like, wow, okay, thank you. I thought maybe it was going to go the other way. And what had happened, the brass guys came up to me and went, dude, we didn't know what to do, but you brought us back in. And so there's an example of the pressure and the stress and being fully aware that you're in a Jedi Star Wars scene where it's life or death. You've got the President of the United States up there. You've got Led Zeppelin or the Who or whoever you're honoring, and then the room is filled with, Hollywood dignitaries and political dignitaries, and it's a very, 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 very professional room. And I've seen the greatest, biggest artists humbled by that event.
Yeah.
And I bet your heart jumped out of your chest when that incident happened.
Yeah, it did. And when it happened more, and at the end, it happened also, but from a joyful place.
Right.
You don't want to
Oh.
be the one that makes a mistake because it could literally cost you your job.
It's
It's how you recover. The first time I
how
ever,
you let me just pay you a compliment real quick. How you don't make mistakes, even as an uber professional in that environment with that little to go on, in terms of notice and stuff. I mean, holy crap, that's amazing,
That's
Kenny.
amazing.
Well, what I do is like when everybody look, I'll do these TV shows where we're filming 14 camera shoot like that was on Access TV, you know, the Greg Allman tribute, the
Yeah.
Johnny Cash tribute, the Dr. John tribute, and I'm playing with all these artists. We usually rehearse the day of the show. We load in cameras, sound, production, trucks, everything. That day, where I'm on the drum set at 10 a.m. I stop at 6. The show's at 7:30, and I've got notes, and we're rehearsing with people like Don Henley and Loretta Lynn. You know, when we were doing what's his name, the Merle Haggard tribute, Nashville, and at the Brickstone, and when everybody goes to dinner, I sit there and run. I make sure the set list is exactly the final set list. It's all in my iPad. I look at all my charts and make sure I rehearse the beginning with, and I look at my drum machine, make sure all the sequence of tempos are in my drum machine for click tracks that are exactly the same as the sequence of the show. And I get my charts in order and I double check that to make sure everything is lined up. Then I practice starting the tempo, and I start the song. I have notes, who to count off, what the count off is, when to count off. Then I go right to the end and do the ending, and then I immediately flip the switch, change the chart, and start the next song. I do the beginning, same thing again. I do the whole show because we have never played the show in flow from one tempo, one style to the next. That will be the first time. This is before the show. Then I usually get done with all that, and I got 20 minutes to get changed, throw something in my mouth, and now we're filming a 2.5, 3 hour show that will be there forever. That's how I do it. It's like you're just like totally under pressure up until the end of the night.
That's
You're-
amazing.
At the end
You're
of
a
the show, I go.
beast.
The end of the show, I go to the engineer, and I go, "Are we okay?" And because you can fix other things, but the drums, and I've never had anybody say anything but like, "Perfect, we're good." He says, "You're the least of my problems," or "You're not even a problem," you know, because they need to have the drums right, and they can
Mhm.
fix other things.
Right.
So much
It's
fun.
amazing. It's amazing.
I know we're running low on time, but what do you do about your hands? I mean, that's like 12 plus hours of drumming.
I'm okay with that part. That I'm good with that. You know, my hands get stiff and stuff, but uh it's more the mental stuff. I mean, you're just writing and you're working, and the next thing, you know, Keith Richards walks on, Don Henley wants to talk to you, Loretta Lynn. I mean, it's just one thing after another, and it's like, and you got Merle Haggard was a 15-piece orchestra or band. You know, Kennedy Center 13. You know, you got, oh man, it's
Oh wow.
it's so much stress, but I feel grateful that I can do it and have done that, and it's been taught me a lot. In other words, there's very little, you know, that will throw me anymore because I just simply have had so much experience. I'm just RPS, repetition of any skills of preparation for success. You just become an expert, but understand that at any moment, just like Tom Brady when he goes up to the line, when that ball's hiked, any moment he could get sacked or he could intercepted.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I mean,
That's amazing. I got one thing for you. I got two more questions myself, and then I'm sure Buddy has some more things. But my question is more of a settle a debate between him and I, or at least give your side here, because I'm not a drummer. But Buddy hates the cage, hates any time there's any kind of sound dampening around the drums. But me, I've been to shows where there's been no dampening, and it is the hardest thing to listen to because the drums just take over everything, and you don't have cohesion. You have a, well, since we're cursing today, you have a clusterfuck, quite honestly. So I don't know how to feel about it, and I'm considering you've been in so many different environments. How do you feel about the cage? I know it's a very specific thing, but I'm wondering your take.
Uh, I hate it. You know, I don't like the cage. I don't like the way it looks. I don't like I can't communicate with the artist. I feel like I'm not part of it,
Mhm.
but I understand why they put it up there. I totally get it. I just did a Goo Goo Dolls gig, and there it goes. The cage is coming up, and it's because Johnny Resnick's mic is right in front of me. So when he's standing in front of his mic singing, it's great. But when he walks away, and if the sound man doesn't mute his mic, it's a clusterfuck. It definitely. All of a sudden, wow, what happened? Everything sounded great. Now it's like, ah. So yeah, I get both sides of the story. Yeah,
Right.
totally.
Yeah. And you we've already said you're number one drummer. What is that call like when you get the call from Joe Satriani or John Bon Jovi to go record or play live? Do they personally like reach out and, hey, we want you?
Yeah, Joe, both those guys reached out to me. Or Sammy Hagar with Chicken Foot.
Oh,
That
love
was a
that man.
that was a great one. Yeah, when Chad Smith couldn't do the second Chicken Foot tour, he told Sammy, "You got to have Kenny." Sammy calls me up and goes, "Kenny, Sammy Hagar, he's like the greatest guy in the world. He's like the greatest guy, super talent, and
Yeah.
and so he goes, and I don't really want to do this unless it's fun. He says, Chad's a lot of fun. I went, okay, hold on here. I said, look, Chad hits hard. Kenny hits hard. Chad's a rocker. Kenny's a rocker. Chad's funky. Kenny's funky. Chad is way funnier than me, but I'm way better looking. And so which is not saying much, but anyway, so I said, Sam, and so Sammy already was laughing his head off. I said, we should just get together and hang out. You want me I'll meet you somewhere, we'll hang out. It never worked out, but he liked the idea. Let's get together, play a little bit, see if it's going to work. And it did. And I went on tour. And now we're like great friends. I mean, I'm going to do other stuff with him. I've even hired him to do stuff where I was the musical director. So yeah, it's so cool to get the call. Bon Jovi called me up to do Blaze of Glory. Joe called me up to do his solo record. I just love that, when they do that.
I love it.
Every once in a while when I'm playing, I've got a Roland kit I jam with, and
Yeah.
it's the 703, 706 series, the new one. I usually put on Bon Jovi, and I usually put on the Blaze of Glory song, and also bang a drum. Those drums in that were just so inspirational, hearing that growing up, being a big Bon Jovi fan.
Yeah.
And then that's how I came, to know your drumming. It's simplistic, it's sweet and tasteful, but has a few, crazy parts to it too, that some of the stops in Blaze of Glory, you pause and then you just come in, and it's like, sometimes I even, playing all my life, what is he doing there? And I try to feel it without counting it, and that's when it screws me up.
Mhm.
How about that Phil, in that, there's that Phil, doom,
Yeah.
and then that weird Phil. It was like all triplets, and it was like, all I know is I just threw it out there, and I ended up on one. And it's going back and trying to figure it out was like even so difficult. And there's that snare drum, with that breakdown verse.
Yeah.
That's 4 snare drums. And
Oh,
what I
wow.
did, yeah, and John was like, he looked at me like, "What are you doing?" I took complete control. What I did, I wrote a snare drum cadence. And then I told the engineer, speed the tape up. And John's going, "What?" I did the same snare drum, because when you speed it up and record it, then you bring it back to the original tempo. Now that snare drum sounds like it's tuned real low.
Mm.
And then I took another snare drum. I did rolls, just shut, because the cadence is
Yeah.
then the rolls, and I kept overdubbing and creating different frequencies, and created that whole thing. And then they bury it, under the vocals, and it's a cool part. Yeah, that I learned a lot of experimenting back in those days,
Cool.
I learned from being in the Mellencamp band because they had big budgets. We could stay in the studio forever, and I could experiment and try. And with Mellencamp, he demanded that, and people like Bon Jovi loved it. I mean, he thought, yeah, oh man, yeah, that's cool. And so we would record 12 hours a day, and that's
Wow.
how we'd come up with. I mean, I could do 12 songs in a day now, but but if you want to experiment, which I'm going to do today in that next room over there, I'm going to do a huge wall of percussion on a 60-minute and a 30-second uh like little movie about depression that Jim Irsay actually wants me to do. And I've already mapped it out, I've already written it out. It's going to be American Indian style type of drumming, with the low frequencies, middle frequencies, high frequencies, drums, shakers, steel things, and then I'll go and add like Japanese style drumming and then Latin Badaca type drumming on top of it, and then I'll step back and listen, and then I'll add some Kenny Aronoff stuff, and then we'll mix that down and put it into iMovie with the movie, and I'll have a soundtrack for them by tonight.
I love it.
All that in one day, and it's 12:30 already.
It's preparation. I'm like so anal. I mean, I'll bring you into the studio. Follow me. I'll show you.
Cool.
This will be interesting. So this is it's Uncommon Studios, and welcome to my room. Okay, this is the drum room. You saw the control room. Here's where I do speaking and recording. So there's decks where I do. During the pandemic, I had to do my virtual speaking. I'll swap that kick drum out today with a 26-inch 1955 Ludwig. But you can see there's cameras. See, I've already laid out the percussion that I'm going to start doing. That's not even the big drums.
Wow.
But, yeah, and I have a whole...
Just gold records and platinum records casually.
They're everywhere. And this is back to my control room.
Oh my God.
That's amazing. Oh, Kenny, this has been wonderful. I knew you were a stand-up guy, but I mean, this is to give us an hour like this. This is wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome, man.
Thank you.
I have to say, Matt, you made me feel so fucking special. And for everybody watching, Jim Irsay is the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, but he's extremely passionate about music. I've known him for 35 years. I invited him to shows like, Mellencamp, Bob Seger, Smashing Pumpkins. And he's got this millions and millions of dollars worth of musical equipment that he's acquired and American collectibles like Abraham Lincoln's handwritten letters and Jack Kerouac's book On the Road in the scroll form, Muhammad Ali's shoes. I mean, just goes on. And he brings this very sample of this museum to different cities in the country for people to see. I mean, it's incredible. And then we perform. We have a super band with Mike Wanchek from Mellencamp, Mike Mills from REM, me. This time we're going to have Ann Wilson. Another time we had Billy Gibbons and Kenny Wayne Shepherd, and we perform. And it's amazing. So right before the time we did it in New York, Matt asked the first question. And he goes, well, I have two questions. First, I want to direct it toward Mr. Irsay, and the other is to Kenny Aronoff. And I was like, wow. I mean, I felt special, man. And, there was a lot of band people there, but Matt, that made me feel good. And your question was great.
Well, thank you.
And the question everybody was saying, something like with regard to, all this incredible equipment, all these incredible artifacts and collectibles. What does this all mean to you or something like that? And I went, Ringo Starr's kit from the Ed Sullivan Show, right over there. That was
Which brings it back to how we kind of started this.
You set me up beautifully.
This was awesome. And, not many people of your caliber, and I'm going to tell this story, not many of your people of your caliber would say, yeah, here's my number. Just text me. We'll set up the podcast interview. You are so accessible to people that want you to record for them in your studio, to do stuff like this. You need to have a podcast, my friend, because your stories.
There's one in the makings, documentaries we've started. I'm going to have an interview right now to be part of another documentary. Somebody just, I mean, yeah. My agent is up my butt about doing a podcast. We've pitched something right here from my studio, a writer who writes for big movies. I want to do it in Kenny Aronoff style. So eventually we'll probably do it. Yeah, because I'm connected to so many different people and it would be very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Gosh, I
Well,
don't think there's a name we didn't talk about today.
Kenny, what have you got going on? Well, in my studio, I do a lot of recording here. I'm going to go on a Joe Satriani tour September 21 through November 19 in the USA, promoting the last two records that I made with Joe, Shapeshifting and The Elephants of Mars. I also do gigs with the Jim Irsay Collectibles or the Jim Irsay Super Band, you know, with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Mike Mills from REM, Mike Wanchek from Mellencamp, Tom Bukovac with Ann Wilson, and super studio musician Michael Ramos, who used to play with Mellencamp, the Bodines, and other bands. And also do corporate speaking. I'm a motivational, inspirational speaker. Working on my second book. My first book was, Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll. You can get an
Got
audio
it.
version and the hardcover, soft cover. And I got a wine coming out that's a Syrah Cab. It's a very high end, very, very amazing wine. It's got a bronze medallion of my face on it on a snare drum, and I've got other things happening. A drum book that I've been working on for 2 years with for Hal Leonard, and it's just it's endless. Anyway, those are some of the things. You can check me out on my website www.kennyaronoff.com, and that'll tell you a lot.
Oh
Awesome.
my gosh.
We talked so much, I didn't even get that far. That's awesome.
I thought I'd do it for you. All right, you guys, I'm gonna get
Appreciate
ready for the next thing. Really cool hanging with you guys.
Appreciate
hanging
it.
with you,
Take
sir.
care and have to see you out on the road soon.
All right, man. See you guys.
All right,
Bye.
take care.
I still can't believe he remembered that Jim Irsay, because they've done a couple of more press conferences, and they've gone other places now, as you heard him say, other than New York, and he still remembered that. That is, I'm going to be selfish for a second. That is the highest compliment anyone can ever pay me, as someone who's been asking questions for a living since I was 19 years old, is to say, well, to still have that question in the back of my mind. And really, I did it because the story there, and Kenny, if you're watching this, the story there is I get to New York the night before, and I have it all mapped out that I'm going to take this 11:45 p.m. bus back home to Pennsylvania to then do a few things with family and then come back to DC. Why am I saying this? Because COVID screwed everything up. This bus schedule that I was looking at to go back to Pennsylvania was completely wrong. I had to be on a 10 o'clock bus, or no, I think a 9 o'clock bus, something really, really, like I didn't even get to see them play. I got to talk to Kenny, meet Kenny, as you talk about in the interview, got to do the press conference. But the reason the team came to me first is I'm sitting there like I've had too much coffee, just antsy. Because first of all, the thing was supposed to start at 7:30. It didn't. It started about 8, the press conference. And they come to me, they do about a 20-minute press conference. It was a strict cutoff. I'll bet you they started performing around 9. And I ran up to Kenny, and he was interested in meeting me because I was the first one with the question and what he said there, and that took me a shock. But the whole thing was, the reason I was first is because I had to get out of there, and the reason I had the question for Kenny was because you had the question for Kenny. You said talk to Kenny, get Kenny to say something, and I asked him about what his favorite piece in the collection is or something. I don't actually remember it myself. So we're going to play it now so that you know what he was talking about. He gave, as you heard him tell stories here, he gave an incredible answer. So here's Kenny Aronoff in the beginning of June at the Jim Irsay collection at Hammerstein Ballroom in Manhattan.
Kenny, when you look around and you see this collection, and knowing you've had the incredible career that you have, what goes through your mind when you see all of this history around you?
First thing I think about is Ringo Starr's drum kit. And Tom, my buddy Bukovac, suckered me into playing that drum kit in L.A. And I started singing Beatles songs and banging on it. And the entire
He almost
original
broke it. We called him the animal.
yeah, the entire Indianapolis Colts team just about tackled me. And I was playing really delicately, but I was singing and playing the Beatles songs. I mean, at 10 years old, I was playing outside, and my mom yelled at me and my brother to come in to, we thought we were in trouble because we usually were misbehaving. And we get into the house, and she's pointing this black and white RCA TV set, and there's four guys on the TV set. It was the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan. And who would have thought that I would be playing on Ringo's kit? And I played with Ringo and Paul McCartney, honoring them for that TV show. So this was like, oh my God, I had to play that kit. Thanks, Tom.
Well, because I got you to talk to him, we got to have him on this show, and it's been a treat. It's been a highlight of this podcast. And I love when we can have guests that are not only so down to earth, but they can have basically an extended episode, because most of ours are 20 to 30 minutes. And the fact that we have him and highlighted different parts of his career, it's really really sweet of him to do that. So it's awesome.
One of the most generous guys in show business. I'll say that, because we were texting back and forth to find the times to do this, and he was like, only 30 minutes? Really? You want to go maybe half hour earlier? I need to be clear by this time so we can start here. And I'm like, yeah, whatever you want to do. So
let's give him as long as he'll give us. I'm always down with that.
But I'll tell you, all the fawning over how fantastic a conversation that was aside, to hear what they go through for television tributes, be it the Kennedy Center Honors or some of the other things he was talking about, that is just insane. Insane.
Yeah,
I can't even imagine that at all.
And I never obviously got that far with drumming, but just being in the industry and you hear behind the scenes stuff, that sets me back. I had no idea he did all of that preparation to put on this show, and he carries it. I mean, he's flawless with it. It's fantastic. And hopefully he'll be on the one for 2022 and get to see that. And I know you'll be looking forward to seeing him again, because he's everywhere. I mean, I can't even name. He named everybody earlier in the episode, but it's a long list, and you saw everything in his studio there, and it's gracious enough to show us his drum room too, and that's awesome. So Kenny, thanks again if you're listening or watching this, and we'll have to meet up at some point when I'm back in LA checking things out, whatever's going on.
So, well, I'm going to go listen to Blaze of Glory and Jack and Diane. For the Music Universe podcast, I'm Matt.
And I'm going to go practice Blaze of Glory and bang a drum. I'm Buddy. Thanks for listening and watching. Be sure to check us out at themusicuniverse.com and like, subscribe, and share. And be sure to, follow us everywhere on socials at The Music Uni. Take care.